Take you back to our other breaking news story. Former Communications Minister Faith Muthambi saying Phumla Williams' testimony at the state capture inquiry has violated the spirit and the credibility of the Commission. Our reporter on the story is Erin. She's in studio with us now, Erin, and you've got a copy of that statement by Faith Muthambi. I mean, to say that it's scathing is an understatement.
Yes, it is. It starts out quite sort of serenely, you could say. She shows due respect for the inquiry and its processes and says it's an important judicial mechanism, but soon launches into Phumla Williams, and there's no love lost between these two. Again, an understatement. Faith Muthambi, for example, saying, Phumla Williams is one of the most shameful manipulators and liars I have ever had the displeasure to encounter. So a lot of beef here from when they were both involved in communications and government. Obviously, that was the substance of a lot of Phumla Williams' testimony yesterday, and her alleging that Muthambi wanted her out because she was an obstacle to certain financial decisions at GCIS.
And that Muthambi effectively wanted to loot the organisation.
Loot the state.
Yeah. So let's talk about this very important issue that, in fact, led us to seeing Phumla Williams breaking down on the stand for the first time, where she likened the behaviour of Faith Muthambi to what she experienced under apartheid-era torturers. What does Muthambi say to that?
Well, Muthambi says that's purely manipulation, that Williams is using this analogy of torture and depicting her experiences at GCIS under Muthambi's leadership as Minister of Communications as torture, as deliberate emotional manipulation. It would be laughable if her intentions in doing so were not so blatantly malicious and informed by, and I'm quoting here just to be clear, an irrational, almost psychotic hatred for me. It's evident, says Muthambi, that we are dealing here with an emotionally unhinged person. Fortunately, in doing so, says Muthambi, Williams's facade has dropped and the real Phumla Williams is now exposed for all to see. So her interpretation, her conclusion after seeing Phumla Williams break down, describing her torture at the hands of apartheid police after she was arrested in 1988, the cries of children adjacent to her while she was physically abused, is that it's emotional manipulation, it's irrational, and it's self-serving.
Okay, I want to talk to you about the other statements in that statement by the former minister in just a moment. But on this issue of apartheid-era torture and how Phumla Williams likened it to the treatment of by Faith Muthambi at GCIS. Our colleague Jane Dutton just last night spoke to a clinical psychologist, Saths Cooper, about the mental consequences for people like Phumla Williams when they're testifying at an inquiry of this sort. Let's just take a listen.
I think it requires a great character of strength and somebody who feels strongly about what they went through, considered that retelling the tale would bring back those kinds of graphic trauma that Ms. Williams spoke of this morning, but yet decided to do so. And that, I think, needs to be lauded in a country like ours, where there are so many cowards, and this is a hero.
What does it take to make her, what do you think went through her mind when she said, right, I'm going to do this thing?
This is a very principled woman. From listening to the few snippets that I have, she's a principled person. She stands for something bigger than those she was answerable to, and decided to tell what she knew, speak truth to serious power that she experienced in her period as a public servant. So this is a woman of great courage, great fortitude, and she must have thought about it very carefully and decided to take that step. And your introduction about the TRC with Makosini and bringing it here tells us we're a nation in that stage of trauma that's just beneath the surface, that's about to erupt at any given moment. And in this case, it clearly did erupt. It clearly, when she spoke of the things she underwent, there was trauma in what she spoke of.
Now, Erin, I just want to talk about, there was actually a stage in her testimony where Phumla Williams does talk about the time when she considered taking early retirement because what she was experiencing at the time at GCIS under Faith Muthambi became a lot to handle for her.
Yes, she spoke about the impact it was having on her physical health and that she'd taken a long, hard look at her situation and decided to apply or send a letter notifying the department of her wish to retire early. But she says following that, she had to look deep inside of herself, and she spoke about actually looking into her soul and remembering her torture in the 1980s and the physical abuse, and that she'd been in a situation where they'd wanted her to become an askari, and she'd managed to soldier through that she managed weeks and weeks of physical torture, which led to twitches, led to PTSD, all of that. And that if she had it within her to withstand that kind of physical abuse and torture, she then decided that she wanted to undo her letter of announcing her early retirement. She says she woke up in the middle of the night, she penned this letter where she says she told Muthambi what she'd endured under Muthambi's leadership, and then issued that letter. And what's so significant is she spoke about her children, she spoke about her loyalty to the people of South Africa, and she said significantly, once she saw Muthambi as a thief, stealing from the people of the country, the same people she'd served when she was experiencing physical abuse at the hands of apartheid police, she could then move forward. And I think that may be part of why we have this such a heated response from Muthambi today. It's become an ad hominem attack.
Yeah. I mean, we've been at commissions of inquiry like this a number of times in the past, and it's a difficult thing to sit there and to recall events from the past 10 years. And we saw the likes of Fakie Mentor crumbling in some ways under the pressure of having to do just that, of having to recall specific events over the past 8 to 10 years. When we look at the testimony of Phumla Williams, hers was very different. It was detailed, and she does come across as, I mean, on the issue of her being paid too much and being stripped of most of her responsibilities. That was something she raised with the minister and said, this is not ethical. You're taking away all of my responsibilities. You're paying me the same salary. Even when she was offered the job, the full-time job of GCIS, she declined it, saying that that's not proper process.
Exactly. Time and again in her testimony, she raised issues about government procedures which are stipulated in law being overturned, being curtailed, being bulldozed by various parties in communications in GCIS. And of course, Muthambi was the minister for much of this time. What's also so significant about Williams's testimony, yes, is her delivery. But if we look at what Muthambi's grievances are now, she's saying there are disputes of fact. And when it comes to disputes of fact, perhaps the best way to resolve them is to step forward and testify under oath before the commission, or to make some written submissions. And Muthambi says significantly that Williams has really undermined the spirit and credibility of the commission. But we're not dealing with amateurs here. Yeah. We have the Deputy Chief Justice presiding over all of this. So if we give Muthambi the benefit of the doubt, her characterization of Williams as a disgruntled employee, clearly there was a clash of personalities here. If we entertain that for the sake of intellectual honesty, we have a commission here with sharp legal minds, with the Deputy Chief Justice in charge. She has a forum to step forward and raise these grievances, which she has so vehemently described in her statement.
So what does the statement say about her availing herself to the commission and giving her side of the story?
There's a deafening silence on that one. All we know is that she says she's consulting with legal team, and that she's looking into this, and that she's so shocked at what Williams has said that she's now consulting lawyers. So that may mean we will see her or some paperwork from her before the inquiry, but there's no clarity from the statement itself.
All right, just for the sake of our viewers, Erin, it's difficult to keep track of what's happening at the inquiry every day. We were meant to be at the inquiry today. It was put on hold. It resumes again tomorrow or Thursday?
Tomorrow,
I believe. Okay, so what's on the agenda then in terms of the various outstanding issues that the Deputy Chief Justice is set to rule on?
So what happens tomorrow is we will hear applications for permission to cross-examine. And this issue goes back weeks. This is something that was on the table when the inquiry began its processes. And members of the legal team had urged Zondo to move forward and make a swift decision on the matter. We saw the legal eagles walking in and out of chambers or temporary chambers at the inquiry offices to discuss this matter. And on Wednesday, we're going to hear arguments from various applicants. Among them, Duduzane Zuma, 2 Gupta brothers, Fana Klongwane, 2 people who worked at the Hawks, and others. Significantly, former President Jacob Zuma is not among those applicants. So that's Wednesday, and then the next witness, who we don't know, but the next witness on the stand is expected on Thursday.
And the other issue in terms of those arguments for cross-examination is that one of the lawyers, I think it was Vincent Maleka, one of the advocates, said that there should be conditions attached to being granted permission to cross-examine witnesses. Most remarkably, the fact that you then should avail yourself to testify and give your version of events under oath.
Yes, it's tit for tat, he's arguing, and he's very strongly argued amongst other members of the legal team. If you want to cross-examine witnesses, which it seems Muthambi may want to do based on how she's derided Williams' version of events, then you also need to come into the witness box and give your version. Now, he strongly argued for that. He's put that forward to Zondo, and the legal team is currently working on articulating their argument for why they think that should happen, that you should only be allowed permission to cross-examine if you too are subject to cross-examination and being a witness. But we have heard from a lawyer representing some of the applicants that they are going to strongly argue the opposite. So on Wednesday, we're going to see the clash of swords between the legal team from the inquiry, who say only allowed if you give testimony, and counsel for some of those applicants saying that's not okay.
All right, so you'll be back at the inquiry tomorrow. It's great to see you in studio today. Erin Bates is our reporter tracking the state capture inquiry. It is